Okay.
All right, back here with Cory. All right, obviously we were talking about the regional champion. Sounds weird. Regional champion Kingsman. And obviously the interesting scenario there in the one game is they take Dad out, and he's moving from A to B, and so you're dealing with all the emotions that as a family, and dealing with all the football stuff, and when everything is with you guys, everything is all intertwined. It had to be, you're getting every heartstring in the world is getting tugged on.
Oh, sure.
And you try to do your job and your kids, so there's a lot of emotions going on. Setting the emotions aside and trying to be the professional that you are, that had to be one of the most difficult professional challenges of your career.
Oh, sure, and that's hard. I mean, that's you know, parents have been pretty healthy, and then you deal with that, and then you're, professionally, you're dealing with, okay, a great one not being at practice all week and not up in the booth in the game like he's been for all those years before that, and that was, that was a little different, a little change of pace for all of us, and it's hard enough when we lose one of our guys that retires after a long run, but in the middle of game week, from a week to week turnover, that was a little tricky as well. So we go over to play Homestead and get a back that gets a little banged up. I mean, they were running a slant and angle 50 defense and doing it very well, so we're over there, and there's some crazy stuff that happens. Chris comes out of the game and tries to avoid a hurdle and trips over a hurdle and falls down and hits his head on the ground, and that's one thing that takes place. So, probably, if it had been tested, probably had a concussion. Geese, probably one of the biggest hits of the game was when Geese went down on the track, before the game. So, it was a heck of a game. They were well coached. We got after it as well, too, and windy game, cold, windy for both teams, but that's football. That's when it's raining for everybody. When it's snowing for everybody. It's hot for everybody. But the wind only blows in one direction, and either you have it and it's helping you, or you don't have it and it's hurting you. If it's going down the course of the field or side to side, and it came down. We had a good field goal kicker and missed it at the end. Had a chance to go 4 years in a row to the Dome.
When you look back on the talent of this group, it's probably going to get sandwiched in because they didn't get to the state championship. Because the next year you're moving on and state championship, so they almost kind of like you get the feeling that they're kind of like an ugly stepchild.
I tell you what,
group.
I feel sorry for these guys. Right. I really do. You look back and the expectations that we put on ourselves, let alone everybody else out here. But trust me, what we put on ourselves far worse than anybody outside could ever put on us. So these guys had a heck of a year. They had a great year and a great run. They're in the Final Four, for crying out loud, and play a close ball game in a Final Four game for a berth at a state finals, and going back again. And one of them's on our staff right now. Brent Lady was the center on that group. And hey, tough. That is tough. And pressure, but you know what? That goes with the business at Penn. But hey, nothing should be taken from those guys, because if you get yourself in a position to be on a Final Four team, you've done something.
Guys played a lot of road games that year, and specifically, when you look at the home schedule, only played of the 14 games, you only played 5 home games because of this, the way the draw was. 3 consecutive games on the road, and the tournament against Elkhart Central, Portage, and that Homestead. So you kind of get a feeling that this team could match any challenge. Didn't matter where they were playing.
Well, that's a nice run when it's great playing at home, as I think every team in America would tell you. They'd rather play at home than on the road. But how guys handle their business when they travel says a lot about them, and that said a lot about this ball club, and because they played they were road warriors. They played a lot of games on the road and did very well all the time. They were ready and prepared and knew the routine.
As we close out 1998 and move on to 1999, the Kingsmen go 13-2. Once again, win the Northern Indiana Conference 5A state runner-up, lost to Ben Davis 27-13. But the game that I remember broadcasting was at Lake Central. First of all, Lake Central at the time had the worst facilities of any big school in the state of Indiana. But the environment there, that was Elmer's group and very, very good football team. But that was just one of many exciting games throughout the course of that one. But that one jumps out at the page of me because I was at that game.
What was the final score of that ball game?
26-23 in overtime.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those games that first of all, you look at what Elmer had done and look at what his teams has done, and the tournament runs and taking teams that are in programs that weren't very good and turning them into respectable, and then tournament ready teams, and then great tournament teams. That says something about Elmer and what he's pulled off every stop he's made. A great football coach. It was a wild game, and again, his offense and his offensive scheme stretched you. He had a wide receiver that was very, very good.
Very good.
I want to say, was it
Tesla? Yeah.
Tessa.
Yeah.
I can remember we had a special coverage, and Geese says, "What are you doing to shut him down?" And Don and Dad and I, we'd worked on a package. We'd walk people out, and we actually had him double covered. And he's caught a ball right there. He said, "Well, that particular pass, he just made another great catch." And we had a double coverage on him. So, you know what I mean? We can only put so many guys out there and try to cover the kids. So another great example of a great high school player making big plays and big games, and he definitely did it. But coming back and doing that in Senzelewski, I mean, making that great drive at the end of the ball game, and for us to get into that situation and win it in overtime was great.
The Ben Davis, of course, appears on the schedule at home, 14-7 loss, game 2. Very, very tightly contested affair. And then, of course, you end up playing Ben Davis in the state championship game, again, where they bested you 27-3. What was the difference between the Ben Davis game number 1, a 7-point game, and this one now a 24-point contest? Did Dick's kids just find another gear in the state championship game?
My guess, Dick probably talked to him a little bit about beating a team once and then playing them again in the state finals. I'm sure that came up once or about 1,000,000 times probably during the course of the week of Ben Davis without me being there. I'm just guessing that. We had a heck of a player, in Dan Phillips, you know what I mean, playing linebacker for us, and again, go back to that Lake Central game, him being able to match up with that win P stuff. I mean, doing that. He started his career at Riley High School and that same variable offense, and he could just see things, read them so well, and he had a heck of a run and went on to play at IU, but that was a great Ben Davis team as well, that's not saying much. You say it's a great Ben Davis team, that puts us in the top probably 30. So
when you look at 99, because the next year you're going to win the state championship, and you look at the components of the part of 99, did you see something with the 99 underclassmen, Cory, that you thought, with a little bit more seasoning, all these extra games, all these extra practice, this is going to pay dividends for eons to come? Did you see this coming?
Well, I mean, you got a guy like Jeff Thompson, and it turns out to be a Notre Dame guy. I mean, a great guy, great student, great athlete, and a heck of a player, an impact type player that we'd asked to do a lot of things in the course of his career. So that's that way. You talk about leadership. You look on the other side of the ball. We'd had that great run earlier in '90. We had Jake Kovacs. Now we had his brother Gabe playing linebacker for us again as a junior and coming back as a senior. Having a coach's son and that kind of leadership in the middle of your defense really made a big impact as well. So we lost some guys off of that team, off the '98 team, and then the '99 team. But what took place in the next year with those guys coming back, maybe not a lot of them, but we had some impact players and some guys that really knew the game and were real students of the game going into 2000.
Okay, so 99 finished the state runner-up to Ben Davis. What jumps off the page at you? Any untold stories that 99 may have brought us that we didn't discuss?
And '99, you said the big Lake Central game was huge, and then naturally what took place at the Dan Phillips factor, big player.
Yeah,
I mean, geez, he's just an impact guy. No, good. That's
okay,
good.
let's move on. Now we're going to talk about the year 2000. Kingsman go 14-1, win the NIC. State champs, beat Center Grove. Eric Moore, really an up-and-coming coach. It was really the early stages of Eric's career. I remember.
I thought we were talking about Eric Moore, the quarterback of the Penn Kings, but that's what I want to talk about.
Yes, but what I remember, sadly, I guess, November 17th, that's the last game, that's the last Friday night in my career that I didn't do a football game. I was at the Noblesville game. They were taking on, Craig Barr was the coach there at the time, and I remember Tim Adams and I were there together. All the region teams had gotten beat, and I just said, heck with it, so I'm going to go down and hang out with you. And Chris invited me to come along the sideline. I had a chance to get to watch you guys do your job, really from a new perspective. I'm always watching you guys from afar, and got a whole nother level of respect for the way you guys manage your players and the physical infrastructure that goes on during the course of the game. So, but you start off the season with a quality win against Valpo at home. Once again, here comes Ben Davis again, teaching you a couple lessons along the way. And they beat you 28-14. Then you string a whole bunch of games together, and you win your 100th Northern Indiana Conference consecutive game this year. And then, of course, beat Valpo again in the playoffs, and then finally Center Grove. So there's a lot of stories going on, as you guys are the first big school to win in the new century. So let's talk about 2000. What jumps off the page at you?
Well, just trying to, making that course of the run again. We know Valpo's got guys, and again, Valpo's year in and year out, they're starting to put guys together. So a great home opener, and then lose a tough ball game to Ben Davis. And then get into our normal regular season run and fight through that. But I think of just the new faces and the new guys and the new feel of the whole concept of reloading and what that really means. I mean, if you look at this run from 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, and 2000, to make a run like that those years is unbelievable. But look how many quarterbacks there were. It wasn't like we had a 3-year starter, you know what I mean, making a run, or just a phenom. Mm-hmm. It's new guys and all those, you know what I mean, all those runs to the title. 5 in that period of time. There's 5 new quarterbacks. You know what I mean, leading the charge. There's new faces on offense, defense, and special teams all the time. Just guys making plays left and right. And again, it started being the program and the tradition and what it takes to be and what it takes to make a run in the tournament, and how do you pull things off in the regular season and stay focused and keep building and keep it going the right way and keep the guys on the right track through the course of a tough season and a playoff run. I think, what Gies did and oversaw and that period was something like I don't think you've ever seen before.
The win against Center Grove, and once again, this is just kind of the beginning of the Eric Moore coach at Center Grove experience. He's run the wing tee as well as it's taught it as well as anybody. And a 21-0 shutout against a very, very determined group.
I guess it's Mr. Football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And playing running back, like the kid was a stud back, and that defensively they played extremely well.
When you look at 2000 compared to there are very few people who get to compare state championship teams to state championship teams. But what jumped off the page at you when you reflect back on 2000? After losing that second game of the season. So you're 1-1, not sure where you're going to be, and then all of a sudden, boom, 13 straight games, you win a title. How did this team compare in regards to things of other state championship groups?
Well, I would never rank state champions. I mean, I don't think that's fair for anybody involved. I mean, first of all, if you can pull that off and get there for that, talk about the 99 team as well, and 89 team, 91 team, all those guys, to be able to pull something like that off is special. You need to have guys that believe. You need to have guys that are focused. And in all those cases, 95 team around the table. But besides that, you look at that, and there's hiccups along the way. And again, it's not what happens to you; it's how you respond to them. And again, you have to have that leadership in a place. It starts naturally with Coach Giesman, but those seniors, what they had to do every year, a different group of guys, different group of people. I think that has a lot to do with refocusing the team, the new seniors, and getting the train back on its tracks.
Did you ever feel like the train was off the tracks?
No.
I can't imagine.
No, there's no time for that.
I mean,
the motto is don't feel sorry for yourself, because there ain't no one around here feeling sorry for us.
Exactly. Now, at this point in time, what's kind of, you've got, 15 years now as an assistant coach, something like that, I'm guessing. Where are you at in the evolutionary landscape for you as an assistant coach?
I couldn't be more excited, more happy, and professionally, and raising my family. Everything is great. I mean, getting to coach for Coach Giesman, getting to coach with Coach Monhoot and my dad on the defensive side of the ball, and Bear and Art and whoever, you know what I mean, and Coach Wagner on the other side of the ball, you know what I mean, and Coach Sasanos. Now we've got some other guys that have joined in the staff and come in the staff, and Trent, my brother, and Todd. I mean, it's like utopia. I mean, you're at where you want to be, and it couldn't be better.
Correct me, when did you officially became the coordinator?
We would all co-coordinate, and that's how we did it. That's kind of the beauty of Geese too. He kind of just left us alone, and we'd go on Sunday meetings, and Don, Dad, and I would come together and decide what we want to do, what we would do at practice plan, and Dad with the front, Don with the middle, and I was the front, and Dad was the back end, and Don would call the defenses and the sideline. I'd be with Don, and Dad would be in the box, and that's how we did it, and it worked well.
So the quote unquote title.
There's no title ever. If there was never a title. There was never a title. I mean, and
I'm sure there was a title inside the program. Was there?
Gies was the head coach. that was the fun of it.
Right.
I just think, naturally getting to coach with my dad and Don was great, and then getting to play for him and grow up naturally with my dad and Don, and it couldn't have been better. It couldn't have worked better, and to be honest, when we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, but when Don retired, it was one of the hardest things that I ever had to experience, and in coaching, losing not only the guy you played for, but coached with for all those years, and that was a tough season for me as a coach, because the guy was always right to my left or right, the constant, you know what I mean? We bounced ideas off. He was right across the hall from me during the school day and going back and forth each other. It was just, that was hard. He was still across the hallway, but we weren't exiting on like we were exiting on all the time before and talking about this and that and the other thing, so.
Okay, let's move on to 2001. Team wins the sectional championship, goes 11-2, 7-0 in the league, and just absolutely, literally, outside of that 13-6 loss in week 2 to Ben Davis, had a close one-touchdown game against Valpo, at Valpo, but after that it was really ugly through the Northern Indiana Conference. It beat people by an average of 50-some-odd a game. But then Valparaiso was able to come back, and I remember this game, I did this game, an overtime loss. So let's just talk about, you still won a sectional, I might point that out because that's important. So you brought home some hardware. Give us an idea what jumps off the page at you in 2001.
Well, you look at the games 1 and 2 against, we've kind of talked about Valpo before and what we saw coming, and look at the scores, and Coach Hoffman's doing a great job, and they've got a great run of guys. Now Smarja's sitting there, you know what I mean, and Ren are there, and they've got some guys that are football smart as well and are playmakers, and we battle it out again, dealing with the whole Ben Davis thing again, and what happens in there, and then what happens in the regional championship, against Valpo was a tough one to deal with for sure. I mean, we've got some guys too. I mean, that's Brian's. Brian's a junior, Madison, and he's a stud, and got other guys out there making plays. But I mean I think you see it happening, and you can see it happening at Valpo. What Mark has going as well too, and he's got a great run of guys and a good staff as well. I mean, so it was.
Yeah, that was the November 9th game, because I remember doing the game. You've got Ren, who's a 4-year kid, and
yes.
Jeff is a 4-year kid. David Miller goes off and kicks at Notre Dame. So you've got to, so it's not by an accident that they've had a great run that they have. But still, despite their greatest group ever, and I would say this team was even better. The Valpo team was even better than the team that won the state championship back in the 70s, because I was at that game. But having said that, yet you're still there, and you're still competing, and it was still one of the. I would rank that as one of the greatest games I've ever broadcast, because there was so much drama at the end of the game.
Yes, I mean they had great guys. I mean just playmakers, and both teams were playing at a very, very high level, and it's a game we got to win either way. But I mean they made some plays on the stretch, and we didn't, and that's what happened. So I mean I think if you look at that team and the team that they had the 2002 team that beat us, that team, the 2001 team, even though they had some aces that next year, the whole team, I think that was a heck of a football team they had that year.
When you look at 2001,
what was that year they went to the state finals, right? Their one team,
yes.
Didn't they go to the state finals? Yeah.
Right. The next year you guys beat them in the regular season like a freaking rented mule, 31-7, and then they beat you in the playoffs. And I know that one. I remember talking to. Matter of fact, I saw Hoffy on Saturday or Friday at the All-Star game. We spent 30 minutes going over stuff because we were talking about the book, this, that, and the other. So he wanted Cory. He wanted me to remind you of this exciting game in 2002 between Valparaiso and Penn, a 16-15 game that the Kingsmen lost on the road at Valparaiso. But the neat thing about this is you started the season with a 31-7 win at home against Ben Davis, and then went to Ben Davis and beat Ben Davis soundly, 30-14. So obviously a lot of promise to start this group that end up winning the sectional title.
Well, we had some talent on that team that could take it to the house from anywhere on the field, but that kind of speed. We had some backs that had that kind of a backfield that scored. If you look at the first Ben Davis team, like Frank DeWong was a junior that year, and Tony West, and we had some R.J. Jones. I mean, we had some big play type of backs and that. And I think, but then when it came down to it at the end, I mean the chances we had inside the 10-yard line at those games. Couple chances that we had down inside there, we didn't take advantage, didn't punch it in a close ball game, and that we could score deep on people, and we did against teams like Ben Davis and Valpo in the first game, but couldn't pull it off the second game. Which you've got to tip your hat again to Coach Hoffman and his staff for what he did. Now he still had some margin running those guys too, and they're still they still had some studs.
And then of course I'll never forget Lamar Woodley. And was it the Saginaw team?
Yeah, I can remember Saginaw. Our players will still talk about that when one of the wildest things, they've got Lamar Woodley, which we all know what he did at Michigan, and then Jackson, their tailback, was a great starter at Michigan as well, and Woodley for the Steelers and Super Bowl champion and outstanding All-Pro player, on that team from Saginaw, a great team that came down and played at Penn, but probably one of the wildest things most of our players will talk about is not the game itself. There's a couple plays in the game they'll talk about, but it's when their band came marching down our sideline and our guys were stretching, and they'd never seen anybody's band come high-stepping down a sideline before. I mean, they were spectacular. They had a spectacular team too, naturally, with some All-American type talent on their team, and we got down. They made a big score early, and then we came roaring back and scored like 35 unanswered points, and beat a heck of a Saginaw team. And you're talking about beating a team like that with that firepower, and then beating a team like Ben Davis had as well. How we beat them, it was a team on a roll.
So going into the game at Valparaiso, having beaten them 31-7 in week 1, what can you remember about the game on the road at Valpo?
Well, it's you think about how, number one, there's, how do you stop a guy like Smarja? I mean, here's a guy that lit it up when he was at Notre Dame. I mean, and could have had a great NFL career if we wouldn't playing in the, in the major leagues in baseball. I mean, as a pitcher, but an outstanding kid, and just had tough physical players as well as that kind of talent. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'll stop the tape on this one, Paul. Where were those 2 final games played at? The 0-1 game was over there, correct?
The 0-1 game was at home, at Penn.
At Penn. That's the regional.
Yes.
And the 0-2 game?
The 0-2 game was at Valpo.
Right. I mean, I won't talk about the field goal or any of that stuff.
Right.
But, I mean, I'll let Geese handle that.
Yeah, he's already did talk about that one. Because I remember going ballistic on the radio, because it was like, first of all, for a region team to beat Penn at any point in time, it's like, it's of biblical proportions.
Yes.
At this stage. But so
they also had a fake punt on us too. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? Which was a big play in the ball game as well.
It takes those kind of Now, correct me if I'm wrong. 2002 was that was it for Chris, right?
I can remember before. I mean, naturally, Chris has been talking about it for a while. I mean, with me.
When did this discussion happen?
With Geese?
Yeah. When did it begin?
Oh, he would say stuff like, down the road, Cory, when I get out and you're doing this, you got to, think about this, and this, or this. Let me show you some stuff about ordering equipment. You know what I mean? Just all the things that he would go through, because we would hang out. Whether, I was working in the weight room or whatever with guys and meeting with him afterwards or before, he would just start making comments like that. And then, several years before, what was going to take place and how it would unfold and what he would do. And I mean, so there were conversations going on for multiple years, but in the last couple of years, and naturally in the last year in particular, a lot more. But he never said a date, and I just, hey, keep going.
Yeah, Hoppy goes, yeah, I drove him out of football.
Yeah.
That's Hoppy's joke last that he beat him in the last game he coached against him. But did you know going into the Valpo game that this was going to be it?
No, didn't know that was going to be the final year. I remember after the Valpo game, my dad walking in, though, and taking his cleats off. He'd always wear spot belt coaching shoes, and took them off and threw them in the trash, and grabbed his stuff on his desk and threw it in the trash, and walked out. And Geese and I were there, and Geese kind of looked at me and he goes, "What did you think that meant?" I said, I think I know what it means. I think we, coached our last game with Dad. So I remember that part of it, and then, you know what I mean. Geese had talked about it. Then as I got, more in the winter after the banquet season and in the spring, naturally I knew it was going to take place. So.
All right, let's do this. Let's transition from